We're joined right now by a very special guest and someone who's provided a lot of expert assistance for us. He actually was on a conference call with our entire legal team that's handling these over 1,000 contacts that have come in. He did a call with our legal team yesterday. It's Corey DeAngelis. He was on right after me on Fox News this past Sunday. He is the Reason Foundation's Director of School Choice. Corey, it's great to have you on the broadcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Jordan.
Corey, first I want to talk, before I get to this federal legislation that just came out too, but I wanted to talk, because I talked about it in the first segment, something that you alerted us to yesterday, and now we have folks who are potential clients at the ACLJ, and it's what's happening in now, I think it's 3 different Arizona cities and school districts. Tell people, because it is outrageous.
Yeah, I just want to first say I want to thank you guys for your work at ACLJ because, look, state constitutions require the governments to provide some type of adequate or free public education to their families. And it's kind of hard for state governments to say that they're doing that if their schools aren't reopening in the fall. So kudos to ACLJ for taking all of those legal inquiries, about 1,000 right now. But the most interesting one that I saw and that we talked about yesterday was Gilbert Public Schools in Arizona, Cave Creek Unified School District in Arizona, and also Mesa Public Schools in Arizona. The governor said that the public schools cannot open until at least August 17th. So what's happening is the public schools, the elementary schools are reopening, but they're calling them child care centers. And by the way, they're charging families $160 to $200 per child per week for something that they're already paying through the property tax system. So it's essentially a form of extortion. Just imagine if a private school were doing this, if they took your tuition dollars and said, oh, by the way, we're not going to open unless you pay us double, and we're not going to give you your tuition dollars back. And by the way, we'll reopen, but we'll call it child care centers. I think most people would think that would be ridiculous for private schools, and it's absolutely ridiculous, especially when the Arizona Constitution says that the government's supposed to provide a free public education. They're not doing that. They're just changing the name of schooling. They're not giving people the educational services. They're giving people less services than they were before. They're just watching the children, and they're charging families double.
They're charging families double. It would be $640 per student a month, or $160 a week. That's one of the programs. And Corey, this is starting when school would have been starting. And, of course, that's public school. You wouldn't be paying anything extra for. We pay for it with our taxpayer dollars, but you wouldn't be paying an extra fee. So they're starting this program when school would have started, which is August 3rd or 4th in most of these cities. And so they're starting it when public school would have started, calling it something different, and charging you $160 a week per student for it. I mean, that's what is so absurd here.
Yeah, it's totally absurd. I mean, just think about it. The Mesa Public Schools are charging $200 per child per week. You multiply that out by 40 weeks for a school year. It's about the same amount that the Arizona Public Schools are spending per child per year, about $8,000, $9,000 per child per year. So they're literally charging these families double. And think about it: the families who are going to be most negatively affected by this are the lower income families that rely on 2 incomes to get by to provide other services for their children, food and shelter and otherwise. And then also the single parent households that were relying on the school system to provide that child care service to begin with. So this is truly a tragedy for families in Arizona right now. And it doesn't seem like it would be a constitutionally allowable thing that's going on in Arizona right now. They're charging families twice for something that's supposed to be free.
So, folks, we're on this. I want you to know that we're on this topic. We're working with Corey. Corey has assisted the ACLJ because, remember, for us to do anything, we've got to have clients to represent and people in those districts, in those schools, students in those schools. He's assisted us with that. Corey DeAngelis is the director of the Reason Foundation, their school choice program. He's also an adjunct scholar at the Cato Institute and the executive director of the Educational Freedom Institute. So, Corey, on the bigger picture as well, because we've been working on school choice and defending it in court for decades. But we launched also like a legal initiative. This was before we initially started doing these closure cases as well, but a legal initiative to expand school choice. What do you think, one, about the new proposal and I know it just came out, but from Tim Scott and Lamar Alexander, the U.S. senators, to provide basically like pandemic vouchers to families so that they have a school choice option, at least during this pandemic, even if they're in states that don't have school choice.
Yeah, I just want to point out really quickly with the reopening debate, it's totally ridiculous that the school system gets to keep your money even if it doesn't reopen. Just think about it with food stamps. If Walmart doesn't reopen, you can take your money elsewhere. If your community college doesn't reopen, you can take your Pell Grant and your GI Bill elsewhere. We should do the same thing with K-12 education. But look, yeah, the School Choice Now Act seems very interesting. I will say I've been kind of mixed on federal school choice before because I don't think the federal government has a legitimate role in education. The word education is in the Constitution. But look, just practically speaking, this if the money's already going to be spent through the stimulus bill, I think a large and substantial portion of that should go directly to families instead of school systems.
Right.
So since this is already money that's already existing, I think it's a good idea to allocate those dollars directly to the families that are in need right now, not to the school systems that are just going to waste the money anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I think, education is up to the states, and that's who decides their voucher programs or what kind of school choice programs they have. What the courts have said is basically they can do it, and they can do it. They have a wide leeway to do it as well, and whether it's you want to give vouchers, tax credits, at what level, how expansive you want it to be. Religious schools cannot be excluded, and private schools, charter schools, homeschooling included as well. But then to that bigger picture as well, Corey, because it's something that you've worked on for much longer than just how people are kind of focused on it during this pandemic, because everybody's rushing to figure out what they're going to do about school, whether they're concerned about their grandkids, their own kids, their guardians of children, or just in general because of society and the breakdown of society if we don't have an education system. School choice in general, as director of School Choice, the Reason Foundation, with the organization you're the executive director of, and at Cato as well. I know you've got a new book coming out October 7th, because we get calls all the time when we talk about school choice about, well, won't this destroy public schools? And isn't this going to mean a government takeover of the private schools or private religious schools? So you have a new book coming out on October 7th. I tweeted out the link. So if you go to @Jordan Sekulow, you'll get you can see Corey's Twitter account there. You can follow him there, but you can also get the link to pre-order his book. It's out October 7th, but you can pre-order it now. School Choice Myths: Setting the Record Straight on Education Freedom. Corey, tell people about that, because I'll tell you. I mean, this is a very conservative audience that supports, school choice generally, but we still get a lot of calls saying, but if, hey, my kids go to a private school. If we allow this, is my private school going to be taken over by the federal government or the U.S. government or the state governor?
No, it's voluntary at the school level, it's voluntary at the family level, and it's voluntary at the state level, that you don't have to accept the voucher funding if the strings are too onerous. And we've seen a lot of programs that don't have a lot of regulations tied to those funds. But each individual private school and family should be able to make that cost-benefit decision for themselves. Is the funding worth the additional regulatory cost? And I will say, yes, there's a lot of other myths in the school choice debate that run rampant, such as, school choice defunds public schools or siphons away money from public schools. But the reality is that the public school system siphons away money from families. School choice just returns that money to the hands of the rightful owners. We should fund the students and not the systems. Fund the students directly, and you can even call it universal basic education income, UBEI, if you want. And a lot of people will say also a similar myth is that school choice will harm the students left behind in the public schools, and that nothing is further from the truth. 26 of 28 studies on this topic find that competitive pressures from school choice leads to better outcomes in the public school system.
Folks, we're going to continue to take your phone calls on this, on the federal legislation that was just proposed. To follow Corey DeAngelis, it's @DeAngelis Corey. And if you go to my Twitter account right now, you can follow him, because I put his Twitter account there, and the link to his new book, so you can pre-order it on Amazon like I have. The new book is School Choice Myths: Setting the Record Straight on Education. He's the director of school choice for the Reason Foundation. He is also, so you can find out more about his writings at reason.org. And if you look under experts, just go to Corey DeAngelis, reason.org. Corey, thank you so much for your assistance to the ACLJ and our legal efforts, and thanks for being on the air with us. We'll have you on again soon when your book comes out.